The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Atlas Chiropractic Center of Escanaba, Michigan, Largent Media, or any of their affiliates or subsidiaries. The material and information presented in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Should you need medical attention or advice, seek out a licensed medical professional or facility in your area. The tapping into uncomfortable with Reade Hubert DC name and all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service.
Welcome to Tapping Into Uncomfortable, the podcast that's the base camp of cerebral warfare, where we pummel Broca's area until it surrenders to our linguistic assault. Get the foil or get the riff. Welcome, my friends. Welcome. You, my fellow co-leaders, are amazing. Don't forget it. That's a big issue. You are absolutely fantastic. They believe you have 125 trillion synapses in the cerebral cortex alone, which accounts for 2.5 petabytes. Now, a petabyte is a number 1 with 15 zeros after it of memory, and we have no idea how it really works. Quantum compute that. So what is on the fresh menu for today? Number 1, will that be cash or check? Number 2, prescriptionism. Number 3, answer of the Q&A, which is, what is I am period to you? And number 4, which has never been done, is no new question for today. We're going to talk about the future of this show. So let's get going. Usually we put a skit on right here, which has been called the Aesop's Fables of Podcasting. We're going to the TIUU Biology Lab to listen in on some ongoing research. Since some universities have lost their funding for their grants, we, meaning TIUU, picked one up. We are checking animal saliva for possible future weight loss drugs. Since the grant isn't that big, we're having 2 college students get bit by animals to see if they lose weight. These students are receiving a $10 gift card at the university coffee shop. They're true humanitarians, so let's listen in. Vincenzo is one of our international students from Italy. He came to be on our school wrestling team, but we haven't told him we don't have one, and he's paid in full. Odd about Vincenzo is he's always wearing his wrestling singlet. Vincenzo, say hello.
Buongiorno.
Next up is his wingman, Maverick. Say hello, Mav.
Hey, man. How's my hair?
It looks great, Mav. First up, Vincenzo. He places his right hand into the hippo's mouth and...
How do I look?
No, negative for weight loss. Next, he places his left hand into the mighty manatee's mouth and...
That tickled. How do I look?
Nope, no weight loss. All right, it's Maverick's turn. He places his right hand into the mouth of the African lion and...
I'm tough! How do I look?
No, negative result. He now places his left hand into the cage of the ferocious North American ruffed grouse.
How do I look?
Negative. Next! All right, will that be cash or check? What does this have to do with anything? What does animal saliva have to do with weight loss? Think about that. Well, the godfather of weight loss actually is the Gila monster, a reptile found in the southwestern United States. So the Gila monster in its venom, in its saliva, actually has a peptide that was isolated in the 1990s. And what it does is it mimics glucagon-like peptide, which is GLP-1, or glucagon in the human body. So they isolate it, and it's called Exendin 4. Now, this company was asked by another company and say, hey, can we use your research to actually maybe develop drugs? So in the 2010s, in early 2010s, company came out with early weight loss drugs. And then they were asked, hey, can we borrow your research? And now we have GLP-1 drugs, which is glucagon-like peptide 1s, which is now changing the world. But it all goes back to the Gila monster, a lizard. It's fantastic. So what does this have to do with cash or check? My friends, our healthcare system is full of a thing called royalties. And it's throughout our system, so that if I came up with a particular way to do some type of chemical reaction and I trademarked it or I patented that, I own it. And if you use it, I get royalties from that. That is not a kickback. A kickback would be if a company contacted me and said, hey, we're going to do some testing for every patient that you funnel to me. We're going to kick back some money. There is a difference between a royalty and a kickback. This really came out through the National Institutes of Health during COVID-19. So when you look up National Institutes of Health and you look up royalties, watch yourself for some very, very bad research that was done and said, because it became such a hot topic, that they attacked two people that donated their royalties during the COVID-19. But you can see it when you're in government and you're part of the process of healthcare, and we're talking trillions of dollars over time, and we're talking billions of dollars, and then we're talking millions of dollars in royalties going back to these researchers, scientists, or doctors, which brings up these points. We know it's not a kickback, which is I agree with. Is it a conflict of interest? Because a conflict of interest, what we're actually finding out is that would be an opinion. So what happens if there's no capitalism or system? What happens if the research says, we're just going to do it, or we're not going to do it because we're not going to gain anything from it? And we now know that our universities are getting billions of dollars in grants a year because we had spoken earlier about the budget of the National Institutes of Health, that we, the people, through our taxes, are giving these institutions of higher learning massive amounts of money. My question would be, is this ethical? Because here's what happens. If it goes into these institutions and they trademark and they patent and they learn some research and they put their name on it, here's what happens. The university gets money in royalties consistently from this. The National Institutes of Health, we the people, get some of that money back too. And ultimately, the scientists, the people who did the work, get a percentage of the royalties too, which is fascinating because we the people give, they do their work, and it comes back and it's sold to us. But the National Institutes of Health, when they give these grants, they get some of that money back, which they then can put into more research. Just recently, there's a thing called the proteasome. You have in your cells, you have proteasomes. What are proteasomes? Proteasomes are absolutely fantastic cellular machinery that actually can identify bad proteins, or we're on our way to making bad proteins, and it can destroy it, get rid of it. If you do not destroy these bad proteins, it could give rise to cancer and other diseases. When this research just came out this year, it wasn't about how fantastic and beautiful and wonder you are and look at what your cells do. It was, look at the potential for antibiotics because we found something inside the human body. Now they're going to patent this and it's going to be sold back to us thanks to our own cells having proteasomes. So it was all about, look at the new group of antibiotics that are potentially coming. Not how beautiful and fantastic we actually are. Do I think antibiotic research, this potentially is very good for us? Oh, no doubt about it. I'm all, go for it. But man, folks, when they actually started tearing apart the DNA in the human body, they were trying to trademark, doing all kinds of stuff. And I don't even know if it's through the court system yet. Because imagine now, if your DNA, if it can be trademarked or it can be patented, look at our future. There's your royalties in that too. So let's do a very cool side note on the GLP-1s, and it's called compound pharmacies. If you haven't noticed around your town or on TV, they have compound pharmacies for the acting drug or compound within the drug to help you lose weight. So these compound pharmacies pop up. And what they do is they give you individually made medicine that isn't the exact recipe of the GLP-1, but it's close. Now, there's a federal loophole on this. The reason that these compound pharmacies are allowed to do this is because the law says that if the demand is so high and the supply is so low, that they're allowed to do these other alternatives. Well, what's fascinating, what just happened is the GLP-1 manufacturers sued these compound pharmacies in court and just won, so that these compound pharmacies, I don't even think they'll be able to continue to do this, even if they appeal, because they lost. The GLP-1 manufacturers have just proven that, no, there is no longer a supply and demand issue. It's fascinating to think about. So when we talk about cash or check, and I talk to you about trillions and billions and millions of dollars and royalties and all this stuff, do you realize that in 2023 alone, we spent $4.9 trillion? That's 18% roughly of our gross domestic product on healthcare. So you look at that and you go, yeah, so what? We have a $27.7 trillion GDP, but Japan has a GDP in 2023 that was $4.2 trillion. We spend more money in 2023 than Japan has made in their entire country. That just gives you an idea how massive our health industry is. And a ton of this is mainly private insurance. That's why we have a big mess right now. So we by far spend the most in the entire world. We are by far the most scientific. We are the biotech world leaders. And we are in last place for wealthy or industrial countries when it comes to our health outcomes. So I'm going to ask you these questions. Number one, why? Why is this the way it is? Number two, do we have a healthcare system from the inside out, or is it outside in? Number three, do we need more science? And number four, do we need to put more money into the system to get a better outcome? Fascinating questions, isn't it, doctors? So co-leaders, what would happen if we had a personal lifestyle system? What if the system was set up for personal responsibility healthcare first and drugs second? So as we're talking about money and in healthcare, I wanted to bring something to your attention. Of course, why would you really think about this? You listen to this crazy podcast for a particular reason, but Wall Street has come down to Main Street. And I don't know if you realize Wall Street has also come down to Main Street is buying up American properties, if you haven't seen that yet. So venture capitalism got into healthcare on numerous levels, but one of the levels they really got on was called a clearinghouse. What a clearinghouse is, it's the intermediary, it's the middle person between the doctor, what they did, and the insurance company. And they help get the diagnosis and the treatment from the doctor to the insurance company. And then the payment systems come through there also. So what ended up happening with the venture capitalists, they came in, they said, hey, let's buy up some of these clearinghouses and let's streamline this process. So that's what they did with America's clearinghouses. They bought them up, streamlined them, and now there's only a handful of clearinghouses that do the majority of the monetary work between the doctor and the insurance company. One of them in particular does almost 50% of all the healthcare claims in America. And that's billions of transactions that are going on. Now, you may not remember this, but do you remember when ransomware hit it, it paralyzed a very large portion of the payment machinery in this country? So these are some of the tough questions that we have to ask of our system, and we have to have answers. We can no longer blow it off. But also, folks, we have some very tough questions to ask of ourselves. Which brings me to something very fascinating. I spoke to you previously about the Delaney Clause. Now, the Delaney Clause in food, we said back in 1958, was if it causes cancer in animals, it has to come out of the human food chain. Well, additives right now, folks, if you haven't heard, they're coming for them right now. They're looking at, okay, why are all these things in our ultra-processed food? That's the biggest issue. You have some in your processed food, but your ultra-processed food. We have over 10,000 additives in our food. There is a loophole in our food that actually is called GRAS, G-R-A-S, and it's called generally recognized as safe. So if a company chooses to say, this additive is GRAS, it's generally recognized as safe, therefore it goes into our food, and it's never been scientifically studied. So a GRAS substance would be salt, pepper, that kind of thing. But now we're getting into these additives, of which 1/3 of our additives have never been scientifically proven because they're under the heading of GRAS. These companies that are putting these GRAS substances in our foods as additives, right now, at the way we're going, they're probably going to end up having to prove that they are GRAS. Are they recognized as safe? I found that absolutely fascinating. And last but not least, in cash or check, if you ever want to see one of the reasons our drugs are so high, you have to look at the process of what drug companies pay our government to get licensing and fees. You cannot even believe the amount of fees that these people pay. We're talking millions and millions per year. That actually equals to billions. Now, when our feds get paid these billions of dollars are then used by the feds to monitor the drug companies. So when the drug companies end up paying tens, hundreds, billions of dollars, the feds take that and then they go and they monitor the people that are paying these drugs coming to market. These are some things I think we really need to take a look at, and we need to see if it's conflict of interest. Can we do it without capitalism? And is it ethical? I don't know, but we're going to find out. Alrighty, folks, let's talk about prescriptionism. When you add ism to the back side of a word, it makes it into a belief, system, doctrine, or practice. Because I'm talking for and against this, doesn't mean it doesn't have value. What's happening is we're not allowed to talk anymore about one side or the other side because everybody gets butt hurt. But not here, because we drive down the middle most of the time. So the closest thing ever to being from the outside in, because health comes from the inside out, it's the only way it gets done. The closest we can come to from the outside in at this point would be in mental health counseling. In mental health counseling, they give you things that you can take in, then you can start to change hopefully the way you think, which can change you then from the inside out. Second thing would be in genetics. As we're getting closer to messing with our genetics for the expression of our DNA, epigenetics, as they do in some forms of sickle cell anemia, as they go in and they change the insides, is expressed from the inside out. So drugs were actually designed to save lives. What's happening now is they give us life. That alone is a major addiction. There is nothing wrong with meds. The abuse of meds and outside thinking in mentality for health is a big issue. So what's the cause of our health issues? Well, of course, it's in the 4 categories that we've been talking to you about. Anxiety, depression, cancer, it's in there somewhere. We can't possibly get down to the specifics within there because we really don't know that much about it. Because prescriptionism is heavily based on statistics, not so much yet on human biology and chemistry. We can argue about that all day long, but that catches up later. So what happens if meds keep you alive? Does that mean you're healthy? No, you're not healthy. That is not optimum health. Optimum health is extremely difficult to achieve, let alone continue, because it's a fluctuating state. We're looking at it all wrong. We need to respect, but if drugs keep you alive, you're healthier. People get mad at that because what we really need is a lifestyle change. First, drugs second. We need to help with the inside versus the outside. But right now, there's no reason for that. And there is nothing to do with the inside of health in prescriptionism. It's just the opposite. When I was seeing it in my office, there was a bunch of guilt for people taking drugs. And the reason why, with this onset of social media, gurus are building this in automatically, the health gurus, to make you have guilt so that maybe for $49.95, you'll do what they say. So we have to watch that. There should be no stress in being healthier and being better. But I ask you this, my friends, what would happen to our present system right now in this country with health prescriptionism if Big Pharma said, We're done. We're not making any more drugs. What would happen? It would crash. But who's in charge then? See where I'm coming from? Health comes from within. It's up to you. But what would happen if you chose imperfection of lifestyle changes in the 4 T's category? There would be no crash. But you have to understand, that's why I am heavily, as well as the AMA, against advertising to people, because it keeps us going. And what's happening now, due to generational thinking of the outside in, we're losing our individual identity or our ability to go, it comes from here. I'm going to do my best to take care of that. So my fellow co-leaders, what do? You do the best for you and your family. You minimize some of this health noise that's going on around there. Get back to the basics. What do you want? That doesn't necessarily mean that's what you're going to get. And remember, my friends, I am period leads to just be period. The Q&A answer for what does I am period mean to you? That, my friends, is up to you. I hope your answer is positive and fantastic. So why no Q&A? Because this is the second to the last podcast, and then we're going fishing again, or at least I'm going fishing again, and I want to thank you for listening. We're going to return next fall in September, and we're going to have some more unique things coming your way, and we'll see where we go, because right now I have no idea for the ideas yet for the fall. But I am humbled, and thank you for listening. And once again, I'm going fishing. So as always, I want you to be happy. I want you to be healthy. And I want you to just be. This whole podcast is based on a book. Be on the lookout for 4 T's to a Better You, a blueprint for identifying and addressing the 4 causes of sickness. You'll be able to buy it just about everywhere.